I was the quiet one, the girl who did everything right and was still invisible. In every family photo, I stood at the edge. Lynn was always in the center, glowing. She didn't have to try. Her laughter filled the house like it belonged there. Mine echoed and disappeared. When I brought home perfect grades, they nodded without looking up. When Lynn forgot her lines in a school play, they cried with pride. I learned early what mattered in our house. Charm over effort. Noise over thought. I started hiding my report cards under my bed. Winning felt useless when no one noticed. The day I got into Columbia, I thought maybe this time. Maybe they would see me. Mom frowned at the envelope. "That's too far," she said softly. Dad didn't look up from his paper. "You'll stay close, family first." But family never meant me. It meant keeping things easy for them. It meant making myself small. That night, I stared at the bus schedule online. 2 tickets to New York. A city where no one knew my last name. I sold my old laptop to afford the trip. Packed 2 suitcases and a single photo of me at 12. In that picture, I'm holding a science trophy. They didn't come to that ceremony either. I left a note saying I'd attend the local college. They never checked. Freedom began in silence. I watched the highway blur past, 100 towns fatting behind me. No one called for weeks. When Mom finally texted, she asked about Lynn's classes, not mine. I laughed, alone in a dorm that wasn't supposed to exist. I learned to love that loneliness. It meant I had escaped. The city didn't care who I used to be. It cared what I could build. I worked nights at a cafe and coded between shifts. Every paycheck meant another step away from them. Every scholarship meant they had less power. Still, sometimes I'd hear Lynn's voice in my head. Soft, demanding, perfect. I wondered if she missed me. Or if I'd simply become a story they told. The one who couldn't handle family life. 3 years later, I graduated with honors. No one from home was there. But when I crossed the stage, I imagined them watching. Not out of pride, but disbelief. The invisible girl had vanished, replaced by someone new. Someone unafraid of being seen. I kept the diploma, hidden behind coats for years. Old habits die hard. If they didn't know, they couldn't ruin it. But now, with Lynn's wedding pulling me back, I feel the weight of it again. That need for validation, sharp as glass. Part of me wants to show them what I've become. Part of me wants to stay gone forever. I stare at the calendar, red circles marking her wedding week. 14 days of noise and perfection. And I realize something I never dared to say aloud. This time, I'm not coming home to please them. I'm coming home to be seen. The taxi stopped in front of the house I once called home. White ribbons curled along the porch railings. The air smelled of roses and fresh paint. Even the mailbox looked rehearsed. I stood there longer than I meant to. 10 years gone, and nothing felt like mine. Mom opened the door before I knocked. Her smile looked practiced, too bright. "You made it," she said, already turning away. Her hug was quick, her perfume expensive. Inside, everything gleamed with wedding chaos. Boxes of candles, silk napkins, folded programs. My father appeared with a clipboard in hand. "Good," he said. "We need help with these." No hello, no how have you been. Just orders, like I'd never left. I took the papers without a word. Lynn's laughter drifted from upstairs, sharp and perfect. She was on the phone, voice high with irritation. "No cascading flowers not gathered. Do it right." When she finally saw me, she waved a single finger. The universal sign for wait. Then the performance began. She came down the stairs, glowing in designer silk. Finally, the caterer's losing his mind and Mom's hopeless. Her tone carried the same sweetness as a blade. "Nice to see you too," I said quietly. She didn't hear it, or pretended not to. "This week has to be flawless. Everyone's watching." Everyone, except the people who ever watched me. At dinner, they saved me a seat at the edge of the table. That old familiar place. Across from me sat Min. He smiled too wide, too certain. A face meant for photographs, not honesty. "So you're the sister from New York," he said. His handshake was firm, calculated. "Product analyst," I replied when he asked my job. He nodded like that meant nothing. "I've been in crypto for years," he bragged. "Private platforms, global partners, the usual." Dad leaned in, fascinated. Min spoke about profits, innovation, endless growth. It all sounded rehearsed. When I asked which firm handled his exchanges, he hesitated. "Oh, we're decentralized, that's the point." I smiled without smiling. Mom's eyes flashed, her silent warning. "Don't embarrass us." Lynn touched Min's arm as if claiming him. "He's brilliant," she said, her pride like perfume. I watched their fingers intertwine, his smile too smooth. A familiar chill crept up my spine. Something wasn't right. After dinner, I offered to clean up. They let me, as always. It was easier to let me fade into the background. In the kitchen, the hum of the dishwasher filled the silence. I caught my reflection in the window. Older, sharper, still searching for proof I belonged. But maybe that's why I came back. Not to be accepted, but to see how far I'd gone. The laughter from the dining room grew louder. I dried my hands and whispered to my reflection. This time, they'll remember me. The next morning, the house buzzed with wedding noise. Florists shouted on the porch, printers hummed in the hall. I slipped into Dad's study looking for quiet. Instead, I found a folder on his desk. Mortgage refinance agreement. Signed 3 weeks ago. The house that was nearly paid off now carried a new loan. The amount made my throat tighten. I flipped the page. Recipient, Min Investment Group. My fingers went cold. From the next room, Mom's voice drifted through the wall. "Are you sure about this, Nom? A second mortgage?" Dad's voice followed, full of pride. "Min guaranteed 20% returns. This is real wealth." Real wealth, real mistake. I set the folder down, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed that this wasn't business. It was a con. Later, in the garden, Aunt Heen joined me near the flowers. She leaned close, whispering, "You see it too, don't you?" I nodded slowly. Her gray eyes sharpened. "Mr. Fong down the street lost everything last year. Same promises." She paused, glancing toward the house. "Your father won't listen to me." I believed her. No one in that family listened, unless it was what they wanted to hear. That night, I couldn't sleep. Min's voice echoed in my head. Decentralized, private networks, global access. It was all smoke. By dawn, I had a plan. I drove into town and found an old cafe with free Wi-Fi. The same one I studied in as a teenager. Coffee, laptop, determination. 3 names appeared on my screen. Ethan Le, Edward Lamb, Min Tran. Same face, different aliases. Each linked to investment fraud cases across 3 states. Each followed by silence. He reinvented himself every few years. New city, new woman, same scam. My stomach turned. I scrolled through public records, social media archives. And there she was, one of his victims. A woman named Quian, from Texas. Her wedding photos stopped 3 days before the ceremony. Just like Lynn's timeline now. I found her email, hesitated, then wrote. Did he ever call himself Min? The reply came hours later. Yes, he took everything. We spoke that night. Her voice was small but steady. He made me feel chosen, she said. Then he disappeared with $60,000. She sent me copies of her bank transfers, police reports, photos. The same smile, the same ring. My pulse quickened with dread and clarity. I printed everything and slid it into a folder. Evidence, truth. But truth means nothing without someone to hear it. At dinner, Lynn beamed beside him, eyes shining with worship. Dad toasted to a bright financial future. I stared at Min across the table, his charm effortless. He winked at me, as if he knew I knew. And maybe he did. Because predators always sense when prey becomes aware. That night, I hid the folder under my suitcase. Tomorrow, I would show them. Tomorrow, they would finally listen. The next evening, I waited until everyone was home. The air was tight, thick with candles, smoke, and tension. I laid the folder on the living room table. Dad looked up from his newspaper, frowning. "What's this about?" "About Min," I said, voice steady. Mom sighed before I even started. "Not this again, Lan." "It's evidence," I continued. I opened the folder, spreading pages across the table. Bank statements, police reports, photos. 3 women, 3 states, the same man. Min stood by the fireplace, hands in his pockets. "That's absurd," he said smoothly. "Anyone can make fake documents." I pointed to a photo of him, beside another bride. Same smile, same watch, same lie. Lynn gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Dad's jaw tightened. "Lan, you don't understand business. These are coincidences." I almost laughed. "Coincidences don't empty savings accounts, Dad." Mom crossed her arms. "You've always been jealous of Lynn." My voice cracked once, but I didn't stop. "This isn't about jealousy. It's about math. It doesn't add up." Min chuckled softly. "She's anxious, that's all. Overthinking as usual." That word again, overthinking. They used it every time I was right. I looked at Lynn. Her eyes were glassy, torn between love and denial. "Please," I said gently, "just look at the pattern." She shook her head, tears forming. "You can't stand that someone finally loves me." Her voice rose, brittle and sharp. "You've always tried to ruin my happiness." I felt the old wound reopen, the same one from childhood. Invisible again, dismissed again. Dad slammed his hand on the table. "That's enough. You're upsetting your sister." "I'm trying to save her," I shouted. For a second, silence. Min stepped forward, resting a hand on Dad's shoulder. "It's okay, sir. She means well. She's just confused." His tone was soft, rehearsed, patronizing. I met his eyes. He smiled like he'd already won. Then I said it. "I'm not confused. I'm done being quiet." I reached into my bag and pulled out my ID badge. "I work at Northbite Analytics. I've made 6 figures for years." I paid my way through Columbia alone. Their faces froze in disbelief. Dad blinked, lost for words. "You lied to us." "No," I said. "You just never asked." Lynn's lips trembled. "I don't believe you." "Check my LinkedIn," I said coldly. "It's public." For the first time, I wasn't the one shrinking. I stood tall, breathing evenly. "This man will take everything you have." I gathered the papers, sliding them back into the folder. "Do what you want with the truth. But when he's gone, remember this moment." I walked toward the door, their silence trailing behind me. No one called after me. The night air hit my face, sharp and freeing. I realized I wasn't leaving in defeat. I was leaving seen. 2 days later, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The screen lit up with missed calls, one after another. Dad, Mom, even Lynn. I let it ring until the silence felt heavy. Then a voicemail came through. "Lan, he's gone," Dad's voice cracked. "Min disappeared last night. The accounts are empty." I stood frozen in my kitchen, coffee growing cold. Another message followed, Mom this time. "The police said it's a civil matter. There's nothing they can do." Her voice trembled, raw with disbelief. The last text was from Lynn. "You were right, please help us." I pressed my forehead to the window. New York looked calm, untouched by their chaos. For years, I wanted them to see me. Now they did, but for all the wrong reasons. I called my mentor, Julia. She'd seen me rebuild myself from nothing. They want me to come home, I said. And will you? She asked softly. I haven't decided. Remember, Julia said, boundaries aren't walls, they're doors you control. After we hung up, I booked a flight. Not to save them, to decide for myself what I owed. When I arrived, the wedding decorations were half torn down. White chairs stacked, flowers wilting in the sun. Mom opened the door, eyes swollen from crying. You came, she whispered. I didn't answer. Inside, Dad was packing with his phone pressed to his ear. He hung up when he saw me. Maybe you can help us, financially, just until things recover. His tone was careful, almost polite. Mom added quickly, the neighbors are talking, the bank keeps calling. Lynn sat on the couch in sweatpants, mascara streaked. If you'd supported me sooner, she said, voice small. Maybe I would have listened. I set my bag down quietly. I can help, I said, but not the way you expect. Their eyes lifted, hope flickering. I'll contact a lawyer and file proper reports. I know people who handle financial fraud. Dad nodded too quickly. And the money? I won't replace it, I said simply. The room went still. Mom gasped. But you make good money. I do, and I worked for every cent. I won't risk my security for mistakes I warned you about. Dad's face reddened. This family supported you your whole life. I laughed once, short and sharp. You mean food and a roof? That's the legal minimum, Dad. Lynn looked up, eyes wet. So you'll just abandon us? I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm finally protecting myself. They stared at me, like they didn't recognize the person in front of them. Maybe they didn't. For years I begged to be seen. Now they saw me, and it terrified them. I'll stay 3 days, I said at last. I'll help you fix what can be fixed, but I won't be your savior. Mom whispered, how can you be so cold? I learned from the best, I said quietly. And for the first time, none of them had an answer. Dad started packing again. The sound of his shoes sharp on the floor. As head of this family, I've always made the right choices, he said. I stayed seated calm, watching him defend the ruins. This situation requires unity, he continued. Mom wrung her hands, whispering, blood is thicker than water, land. The words hit me like a memory I'd outgrown. Unity always meant obedience in this house. I looked at Lynn, still curled on the couch, eyes red. You think you're better, she snapped suddenly. Her voice cracked, brittle and wounded. Perfect Lan, with her fancy job and her cold heart. I checked my watch, 20 minutes into the same argument. I'm not perfect, I said quietly. I just stopped apologizing for being different. Dad slammed his palm on the table. You will not lecture this family. His voice shook with something that sounded like fear. I stood up, taller than I'd ever felt in that room. When I was 8, I won the district spelling bee, I said. You told me you couldn't come because of a meeting. Their faces froze. I saw you afterward at the diner with Lynn, I added. Celebrating her participation ribbon. Mom's mouth opened, then closed again. In 10th grade, my science project won an award. You skipped it for her choir concert. The silence that followed was heavy and honest. Graduation night, I continued. You left before my name was even called. Lynn looked away, guilt flickering behind her tears. Aunt Heen's voice came from the doorway. I saw it all, she said, clutching her purse. Every time you made her small. Dad flushed red. This is family business, Heen. I am family, she said firmly. Her presence steadied me. I turned back to them. I'll help with the debts, I said. Their relief came too quickly. But on my terms. I opened my briefcase and placed 3 documents on the table. The money goes directly to the bank. No access for any of you. Dad frowned. You don't get to dictate terms in my house. I do when I'm the only one who can save it. The words left my mouth like truth set free. Mom gasped as she read the second page. An acknowledgement of years of favoritism and neglect. We would never sign this, she said, trembling. Then I leave, I replied simply. The room fell silent, except for Lynn's uneven breathing. Dad reached for his glasses, hands shaking. You've become so hard, he said. I've become honest, I answered. 10 minutes later, all 3 signatures marked the paper. I texted my advisor, proceed with the transfer. It was done. I gathered my bag and turned toward the door. Aunt Heen followed me out to the porch. Will you be all right? She asked softly. The afternoon sun warmed my face. I already am, I said. I walked to my car without looking back. Some bridges don't need rebuilding. Some are meant to stay burned. 1 year later, the silence feels different. Not heavy, not lonely, just mine. The diploma that once hid in a closet now hangs above my desk. The name gleams under sunlight like proof of survival. I built a new life from the pieces they ignored. A small house, a steady job, a garden that grows without approval. In the evenings, I mentor young women at the community center. Girls who remind me of who I used to be. They speak softly at first, afraid to take up space. Then they learn they don't need permission to exist. Last week, one of them said, "You saw me when no one else did." I smiled because I finally understood. We see others best when we've learned to see ourselves. Sometimes I still think of the house I left behind, but I don't ache for it anymore. The distance has turned into peace. In my garden, the rose bush I cut back last fall blooms again. Stronger, wilder certain. Some things only grow when you stop apologizing for them. And so did I.